In this video tutorial, you'll learn the basic steps for teaching a dog to walk nicely on leash using environmental rewards like sniffing. By putting sniffing on cue, we can train a dog to wait for permission to investigate new smells rather than pulling towards them. The first step is to teach the dog how to walk nicely with no distractions. The best environment for this step is somewhere like your own living room where there is nothing interesting for your dog to smell. You will need a standard flat leash, some tasty treats, and a marker signal. In this example, I am using a clicker for this step, and later I will use the verbal marker, yes. If you're not familiar with how marker signals work, I recommend watching our video on marker signals linked in the video description. Set yourself up with your leash and clicker in your right hand and your left hand free. I like to loop the leash over my wrist. If you struggle to hold the leash and clicker together, you can use a verbal marker or attach your leash to a waist belt. Take a step backwards and click and treat when your dog follows after you. For dogs with a strong history of pulling, like Bowie the Vizsla, taking a step forwards often causes the dog to immediately surge to the end of the leash. We're going to introduce the concept of following the human walking backwards first, as this new context will reduce the likelihood that the dog will pull right away. Try not to pull the dog towards you with the leash. Instead, either wait for them to follow or encourage them closer by talking to them or patting your leg. Continue to take backwards steps, clicking and treating every time the dog steps towards you. Gradually increase the number of steps that you take at a time. Once your dog is confidently following you as you walk backwards for 5 to 10 steps at a time, we can slowly introduce more forward movement. If your dog starts to pull, simply add in some backward steps. Continue alternating between forwards movements and backwards movements. Avoid straight lines as much as possible at this stage, as that is when your dog is most likely to pull. You should start by reinforcing your dog every few steps, then gradually increase the duration between each click and treat. As your dog starts to understand the exercise, begin to vary your speed and direction. Try to time your click so that you are rewarding your dog for staying with you, not clicking the moment they return. Clicking your dog for pulling and then returning can create a dog who constantly yo-yos between the end of the leash and back again. Continue practicing until your dog understands how to walk nicely in the no distraction environment. This may take several sessions, depending on how much experience your dog has with training and how ingrained their pulling habit is. The second step is to teach the dog to look at the human when there's something that they want in the environment rather than pulling towards it. For this step, you should still be working in your low distraction environment. We're going to introduce a single distraction to begin with. I am using food on the ground, but you could also use another distraction like a toy. Your distraction should be something that your dog really wants. Start to approach the distraction. If your dog pulls, walk backwards away from the distraction. You may have to do some spinning to help your dog stay on the left side. Reward the dog for staying with you by clicking and treating. Wait for your dog to offer a voluntary check-in. If you've never taught voluntary check-ins, where the dog looks at you without being prompted, I recommend teaching that behavior without any distractions first. When your dog looks at you, mark the moment with yes, and then rush them over to the distraction. It's important that you go fast enough that the dog doesn't pull on the way there, and that you're very obvious in your body language as you take them to the distraction. Our goal is to make it clear to the dog when they're allowed to engage with the distraction. Place a new distraction and repeat the exercise. Bowie offers the check-in much faster on this repetition, but you may need to be more patient with your dog. Continue repeating the exercise. Remember, walk backwards when the dog pulls, and wait for them to offer a voluntary check-in before marking and releasing them to the distraction. Your dog should become faster and faster at offering the check-in, and gradually stop attempting to pull towards the distraction at all. You can start to become less exaggerated with your body language as your dog begins to understand the concept of being released to the distraction. Continue practicing until your dog is really comfortable walking around the distraction and doesn't try to pull towards it at all. This usually takes a couple of sessions to achieve. Finally, we're ready to start using real-world distractions as reinforcers. For this step, you will need an environment with scattered distractions. The key is finding a place with the right density of distractions. If there are too many, we won't be able to control when the dog does and doesn't access them. For a dog like Bowie, who is very rewarded by scent, a grassy park wouldn't be appropriate because there are interesting things to smell everywhere. Instead, the environment we're working in has a big concreted area that he doesn't find interesting and scattered garden beds that he's very keen to sniff. Start to approach one of the distractions the same way you did in the previous step. You can click and treat your dog for walking nicely on the way there if the distraction is further away than they can wait between reinforcers. As usual, wait for the dog to offer a check-in, mark with yes, and rush them to the distraction. Encourage them to sniff by investigating the interesting place with them. In this video, I am using the words "go sniff" as a release cue after I mark with yes. Pick another distraction and repeat the exercise. If your dog starts to pull, change directions or walk backwards. You can use this method around other distractions as well. Here Bowie is excited to go say hello to his owner, so I waited for a check-in and then took him over. Our eventual goal is for the dog to automatically check in with their handler whenever there's something interesting in the environment, regardless of what the distraction is. Their handler can either release the dog to the distraction or choose not to release the dog if the distraction isn't something appropriate for them to approach. You'll need to invest some time working on this behaviour, starting with environments with a low density of distractions and working your way up to environments where the distractions are more frequent. You should practice both releasing your dog to a distraction and walking past the distraction without releasing the dog before you increase the number of distractions in the environment. Here's an example of a dog who is further along in his training. Despite the fact that the food on the boxes and the other dogs are within easy reach, he doesn't try to get them without being released. Remember, good training is proactive, not reactive. In the early stages of training loose lead walking, you should be setting up training time where your goal is to practice nice leash manners, rather than trying to stop your dog pulling when you have to reach your destination quickly. I recommend using 2 pieces of equipment. One piece of equipment that your dog is allowed to pull in, and one piece of equipment that you only use in environments where your dog is capable of walking nicely. For example, we are teaching Bowie that when the leash is attached to his harness, he's allowed to pull, but when the leash is attached to his collar, he has to walk nicely. To start with, we'll only use the collar in training sessions, and as his skills improve, we can start to use it on real walks. If you'd like further assistance with your dog's training, check out our other videos or contact your local positive reinforcement trainer for help. To get notified when we release a new video, subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook. Happy training, dog geeks!